Hi, this is Mrs. Harris. We're going to talk about your short story persuasive papers. We are working on a quote sheet. You're going to take the quote sheet and you're going to apply it to an outline. And the purpose of this flipped lesson is to help you understand how to fill the quote sheet out properly and how to apply what's on the quote sheet to your outline. So we're going to start with this first page. You need to understand everything you write needs to include logic. So logic is super, super important. It's got to make sense. You need details to prove your point and transitions to tell the reader, we're leaving this point, we're going into another point. Your ideas need to be reasonable and logical. When you introduce a quote, give a transition such as to begin with or next. When you change from discussing the quote to giving opposite case scenario, OCS opposite case scenario, CA counter argument, and R rebuttal, you need transitions such as however, nonetheless, still, on the other hand. If you forgot what opposite case scenario, counter argument, and rebuttal mean, you can look at my quote sheet and the outline and give you a couple hints and clues, or you can ask me to show you that PowerPoint we saw in class explaining what that was. Also, you can look at your short story packet. It does have definitions and examples of those writing techniques: opposite case scenario, counter argument, and rebuttal. So here are some topics that I'm going to throw out to you. You have your short story topics in your packet. Some students are looking at the topics and are saying, these are really, really confusing topics. I don't like these topics. If you're the student who looked at the short story packet topics and do not like them, if you feel those are a little bit too difficult, let me make it a little bit easier. If you can work on my short story packet topics, please do that. This is if you really need that extra help. For English 1, here's your topic sentence. James Hurst's The Scarlet Ibis proves that the narrator is to blame for Doodle's death. Or, James Hurst's The Scarlet Ibis proves that the narrator helps Doodle by pushing him to live life to the fullest. That's really exactly what my other topics were, just it's stated more simply. English 2, Amy Tan's Two Kinds proves that the mother's unrealistic expectations are to blame for Nick Nikon's failures. And then the other topic is Amy Tan's, it should be B, Amy Tan's Two Kinds proves that Nikon's laziness is to blame for her own failure. Again, same topic, it's phrased differently. Hope that helps you if you need that help. Okay, the topics we're dealing with. Again, the topic for Scarlet Ibis, disabled people will have more enjoyable lives if pushed to achieve goals. Or you could have chosen pushing disabled people to be normal is dangerous. Two Kinds, your topics to choose from. If parents hold their kids to unrealistic expectations, failure will result. Or kids' failures cannot be blamed on the parents. Kids are responsible for their own failures. You should know that there were more than these topics offered to you, but I'm taking the two most common topics to give examples from, and if you want to use these topics and use my help, great. If you want to go off on your own with a different topic, go for it. Okay, common sense. Complete boxes 2 and 6 before boxes 1 and 5. So you're going to notice that there's box 1, 2, 3, 4. Why aren't you doing 1 first? Well, 1 is introduce the quote. How can you introduce a quote when you haven't seen the quote? So you can introduce the quote after you found it. That should be common sense. So you should fill out box 2, deliver the quote, and then go back to 1, introduce the quote. So the idea, PowerPoint, you already saw that. You should have seen that. It's on my Edmodo site as well. Introduce, deliver, explain, and analyze. So let's look at your quote sheet. You should look at your quote sheet right now and see that box 1 is introduce the quote. Box 2, deliver. Well, how can you deliver a quote you haven't? How can you introduce a quote you haven't delivered? So just common sense. Please start with box 2 and 6. Get your first and second quotes down, then go back and introduce it. Okay, so let's look at the other side. Use 2 quotation marks for narration, and with the exception of exclamation mark or question mark, place the punctuation marks outside of the question quotation marks. On this side of the page is just telling you how to write the quotation correctly. Conversation is written like this, using quotation marks inside of quotation marks. You have 3. So these two tell you it's from the book, and this one, before the word hello, the one tells you someone's speaking. So hello, how are you? Question mark goes before it, and then this question mark says someone's done speaking. These two say, hey, it's from the novel. I wrote the quote directly from the novel, but in the part I took, someone's speaking. First, the first set of quotation marks again say that you copied it from literature. The second set, the little third mark, says someone's speaking. If the author and title is mentioned if the author and title are mentioned in the first sentence and no other source or piece of literature is used, you do not need to mention the source again. Only use page numbers like this for page 2. You need to find a quote to prove your topic in chronological order. Remember that your topics have to be in chronological order. For freshmen, do not start with Doodle's death. Look at the quote sheet. I give you advice on where to find your quotes. If you look at that quote sheet, quotes do not have to be dialogue or conversation. Again, use my suggestions. You have to go in chronological order. Don't begin with Doodle dying. Boxes 2 and 5 introduce the quotes. What information do you need? For boxes 2 and 5, explain who is talking immediately before stating the quotes. Where in the story does this quote come from? Summarize what has been happening in the story. Prior to the quote, you have to give the reader context. So you have a quote from the story. You got to tell me what's going on before this quote takes place in the story, so I can get an idea. I can picture in my mind where that quote comes from. What's happening in the story when the quote takes place. Again, see my idea link on Edmodo for more information about this. Boxes 3 and 7 explain the quote. Discuss the quote. Do not drop this quote out of nowhere. That's called a dropped quote. And move on to the topic. You cannot give one sentence of explanation after each quote. Do not give this quote and write one sentence such as, the quote does a great job proving the topic. This is why people should. You can't do that. You actually have to take the time and you have to show me why the quote proves your topic. Summarize this quote in your own words. What is this quote really about? Try for 2 sentences. So after you give the quote, you have to explain what the quote means. Tell me, what is this quote about? Summarize it, paraphrase it. IBIS, analyze the quotes, box 4 and 8. Let's review the topics. I should know what your topic is throughout your paper. When you're discussing your quotes and I don't know what your topic is, that's a problem. You should be discussing your topic. So the first topic, disabled people will have more enjoyable lives if pushed to achieve goals. Pushing disabled people to be normal is dangerous. Okay, so now you give your quote. You introduced the quote, you gave it, you put the quote in your own words. Now tell me, how does it prove that Doodle should be pushed or it was dangerous to push Doodle? You have to explain it to me. Topic 1. By pushing Doodle, Doodle has a more enjoyable life. Doodle is better off being pushed too hard than doing nothing with his parents who have no expectations for him. Discuss what the parents would have done with Doodle versus what the narrator does for Doodle. So you gave your quote, you have to discuss. Then the parents are not doing anything with Doodle. Explain what exactly in the story led you to that conclusion. What does the narrator do for Doodle? You have to talk about that. Why is Doodle better off with the narrator than with the parents doing nothing? What do the parents do? What do they not do? What does the narrator do? Why is it a good idea? And then topic 2, the opposite. What does the narrator do for Doodle that's dangerous? By pushing Doodle to be normal for school, the narrator disobeys what the doctor prescribes. In your paper, you should be telling me what the doctor prescribes. Do not assume I know the story. How is Doodle endangered in both quotes? In each of your quotes, tell me, you only need 2 quotes for the paper, tell me how Doodle is in danger. Discuss what the doctor said not to do. Talk about the narrator doing exactly what the doctor said not to do. Talk about what happens to Doodle. If you don't mention that Doodle dies in your paper, you have a problem because you haven't proved that pushing this kid is dangerous. You haven't shown me he's died. Why is having Doodle run dangerous? What did the doctor say? You have to prove your point using story details and explaining it. Now, you can't give me a summary of the story. You have to give me some examples from the story and talk about it in your own words. 2 kinds. Analyze the quotes in boxes 4 and 8. Let's review again the topics. Topic 1, the parents hold their kids to unrealistic expectations. Failure will result. In topic 2, kids' failures cannot be blamed on their parents. Kids are responsible for their own failures. Okay, so you need to discuss the topic in boxes 4 and 8. I need to know what your topic is. Topic 1. By the mother comparing Nikon to famous people, by the mother criticizing Nikon, the mother makes Nikon believe failure is not being perfect. So if you're not perfect, you failed. Talk about that. You're a failure if you're not perfect. Parents' love is based on success. That's what Nikon believes. Talk about that. The consequences that take place when she knows she's not perfect and her parents must not love her. Talk about that. Talk about Nikon's failures. You can't say that the mother pushes Nikon to fail and Nikon's failed without talking about Nikon's failures. What has Nikon done that's a failure? Give a list. Explain why each one's important. What are the consequences of the mother setting too high of expectations? Topic 2, talk about what Nikon does that is lazy. Well, how is she lazy and how does she fail? How is it her fault? You need to give me examples. Slide 9, 10, 11, ops case scenario. You need to look at my outline and my quote sheet to understand this, but let me tell you that if you don't have ops case scenario, counter argument, rebuttal elaborated, you're not at an A category. If you attempt it, you're at a B. If it's just one sentence or nothing at all, you're probably at a C. You need to think on a higher level. Go back to my other PowerPoint tools or my short story packet to understand what this is. Ops case scenario, OCS, CA, counter argument, rebuttal, R if you don't know what it is. Remember, look at your quote sheet. Read the clues. Read the hints I give you. I provide you a note sheet about, and you need to read what I write on the note sheet 3 times over. Read what I write in the outline. My lesson, how to do this, is actually in the note sheet. Read what I say. You got to read what it says. Process of being a thinker. When you write out the quote sheet, you should be writing brief ideas. When you copy the quote sheet onto an outline, you should be expanding, developing your ideas. If you copy the information from the quote sheet directly onto the outline without change, you're not thinking. You're not elaborating your ideas. Each time you go from one step of writing to the next, you need to write more. Elaborate. Give more detail, example, explain what you mean. Do not assume I know what you're thinking. Real thinkers change their ideas from one step to another. They are critically analyzing what they wrote and they are asking if they can improve. Be a thinker. It's called revising, editing. You need to go from one stage to the next. You need to improve. You need to elaborate, not just copying things over. Continue to follow the outline using common sense. On the outline you will read, give the first quote. Something written word for word does not have to be dialogue. On the outline you should see that explain the quote is a self-explanatory. You have to figure out how to take what's on your quote sheet and how to apply it to your outline. So if I wrote in the outline, give the first quote, you got to look for the quote sheet and you look for where it says quote in the quote sheet. You have to use the quote sheet and outline and compare both and see where each thing goes. So in the outline, you should see where it says explain the quote. Well, that comes from your quote sheet where it says explain the quote, analyze the quote, E and A, explain, analyze, from idea. Analyze the quote in the outline has been divided into a few different parts. I break this down to force you to analyze. So if you combine what I write in the outline with the analyze section on the quote sheet, you should be able to write more than one sentence. What hints I give you in the quote sheet? What hints I give you in the outline? Put it together. You should have a good paper. Don't be lazy here. I am not charging you per word. Write as much as you can without repeating your ideas by explaining, going deeper, explaining the example with detail. How do you use detail? Try writing for example and see what happens. Give examples. Explain what you mean. Write for someone who's never read the story, not for a teacher. Do not assume I already know something and leave out important information. You will repeat this process a second time. You will see in the outline that you now need a copy from the quote sheet the second quote. Introduce the quote, the lead-in, give the quote, deliver the quote, explain the quote. Again, on your outline, you'll see that you first introduce the quote, give it, explain it, analyze it, and then repeat that. 2 quotes per, 2 quotes total. Okay, an ops case scenario. I'm going to talk more about how to find this The last two slides here, since the time is running out, will be on the next Edmodo. So I'm going to see you on part 2. This is part 1. I'm going to see you again in part 2. Please play this. It should only last a few minutes. Okay, so remember, connect the link to part